As little children start school, there's perhaps no greater challenge for them than learning to read.
Here's his tail wagging.
How can we make sure everybody gets it? Because, reading opens up the world.
S is for sun.
But research suggests that everyone isn't getting it, and not enough Australian children are achieving the reading and writing results they should.
Australia is a very wealthy country. We should not be middle of the pack in terms of our reading skills.
I do think we have a problem with kids being demotivated, disengaged in the reading process, but also the writing process.
As an English teacher, it's really worrying. If it goes further down, we're really in dire straits then.
And now there's a brand new problem, the impact of digital devices.
Mobile phones should be banned at school. I can see no reason that's been put to me as to why they shouldn't be.
And part of the challenge for us as educators is that this is a real-time experiment that's been conducted on us all.
Tonight on Four Corners, we investigate the concerns about how children are being taught the fundamentals of education, how to read and write. We examine whether literacy levels are dropping, the critical points at which children are falling through the cracks, and how to catch them.
Or I'll get him to hold mine. Can I hold it? Yeah, Jackson, I'll hold him. All right. Keep going, Joel. Let's go, boys and girls. Let's go. We're following. We're following. Let's go, Alira. Don't run. Is there a car in the classroom? What's this? Hats off.
We're going to get our name tags one at a time. Alira, where's your name tag? Can you see your name tag? Have a look at you, Alira. Which one's yours? Good girl. Jake, can you pick it up for me?
These 4 and 5-year-olds are at an orientation day ahead of starting school next year.
Good boy. Thank you, Jackson. Where do you think it might be? Oh, I can see it there.
Doing our puzzle.
From their first moments in the classroom, a huge amount of energy will go into teaching them how to read and write.
Got J for Jan.
You shouted. It's a miracle.
Good job, Lennon.
But the current system isn't working for every child.
Do you think Gerald's not frightened anymore? He's not frightened, is he? No.
I think all parents would agree that we should be doing better, and they would like to see their children doing better. We want to see Australia at the top of the table when it comes to literacy. It's so important to everything you do in life.
A global reading literacy study found 16% of Australian Year 4 students were in the highest category of achievers. But there are concerns about the strugglers. 1/5 of the students tested were either at or below the lowest benchmark. Australia ranked 28th out of 50 nations, behind countries like Lithuania, Kazakhstan and Bulgaria.
Over the last 10 years, we've had NAPLAN data, this incredibly rich and detailed source about what's happening with the literacy and numeracy skills in all of our schools. The results are not yet good enough.
NAPLAN figures across Australia show that children who performed well in reading, writing, spelling and grammar in Year 3 stop making the same gains as they move through the latter years of primary school.
All the effort that went into getting those kids to perform so well at Year 3, equivalent effort needs to be put in after Year 3, quite simply because reading gets harder. These kids are good kids. They should be flying, and they should be a joy to teach. They should be easy to teach.
Even though Year 5 is improving, Year 7 is flatlining. That transition from primary into secondary school is a period where reading progress is really slowing down. We don't fully know why, but it's losing opportunities where children whose reading is better in Year 5 could be kicking onwards, could be building on those skills, but instead they're not, they're stagnating.
NAPLAN results in writing in particular have been worrying.
We find that even by we move to year 3 to year 4, as soon as you mention the word writing, there's groaning going across the room. The students have already switched off.
By the time they reach high school, many kids just aren't able to do the work.
Vocabulary has definitely decreased. Spelling's quite atrocious, like really bad, that really small, simple words are really misspelled. You would expect them to have them handled by high school, so such as there, T-H-E-R-E, T-H-E-I-R, you know, those common mistakes that are still present. The other common one in respect to punctuation that I see is no kid has a clue how to use an apostrophe.
Writing's a real worry. The results have been steadily getting worse, both for boys and for girls. Boys are much worse than for girls. That the average student is working about 12 months below where they used to be a decade earlier.
Every year we produce a new crop of 40,000 15-year-olds who don't meet OECD standards on reading. You know, that's 1 in 7 15-year-olds. I don't think we can afford to have that many 15-year-olds in an economy in which jobs for unskilled workers are disappearing, not meeting basic OECD reading standards.
The older children get, the more that struggle and the fewer that shine. While this year's NAPLAN reading results showed that 28.8% of Year 3 students reached the highest band of achievement, only 4.5% of Year 9s were top performers, and about 20% of Year 9s were below or barely scraped through to meet the national minimum standard.
To meet the national minimum standard for Year 9 reading means that you're operating at about the same level as an average Year 5 student. That's not a high level of reading. The fact that 20% of students are either below that level or only just about that level is a real concern.
What do those Year 9 results say?
What they say is that we're flatlining as a nation, that we're not making the progress that we should be making, and that we need to redouble our efforts.
At Australia's oldest university, the teachers of tomorrow are about to embark on their classroom careers.
I congratulate you all and wish you the very best in your careers as teachers. You, as graduates, have the opportunity to pioneer and influence change.
Charlotte Wild is so passionate about education, she abandoned her career in the law to take up teaching.
I love seeing their face light up. I love seeing that sense of accomplishment. It's a beautiful thing when a child can read through a book and just have a big smile on their face and be really proud of what they've done.
You should find some general information in that document that points out the characteristics that are relevant for teaching those students.
These student teachers will soon face a class full of primary students.
I mean, some schools have mixed ability classes or like streamed classes.
They'll have to teach kids with varying abilities how to read.
It's a different experience and a different process for every child. And so it is about teachers honing their different repertoire of strategies, you know, to meet the needs of particular children.
Implementing the strategies, so strategies that support success, we just said implementing all of those.
Some wonder if they are learning enough at university to prepare them to teach the basics.
I know at university we're taught a whole abundance of approaches to teach reading and writing, but we're not necessarily taught which one works. I think the reason for that is people don't know. You've got plenty of experienced teachers telling us, you know, try this, try that. Until we get into a classroom and see for ourselves, I think it's hard to work out how we're going to teach reading and writing in the best possible way.
Maybe there are other responsibilities of the school that we should have considered instead.
Poor results linked to literacy might begin fundamentally here at the university level. I believe there are some issues that arise here at university as we're learning these skills to teach young students in the future.
The teaching of reading and writing has gone through enormous change over the past 60 years. In the 1950s and early 60s, it was far more structured and regimented, with an emphasis on grammar and rote learning.
Nearly all teaching has changed in the past decade, but at the grassroots level, the change has been more subtle.
In the late 60s, a radical change began in how reading and writing was taught. There was less focus on grammar, spelling, and the system of phonics, where children were explicitly taught how to break apart and sound out words. The new way encouraged children to learn how to read by recognising and remembering whole words.
At this school, you might never hear the alphabet being recited. Rather, the children identify with total words and related objects.
In the middle of your paper using all the space.
Obviously, there are a lot of positives to that. There are a lot of things about schooling in the 50s and 60s that we would not want to go back to. But I think what happened in relation to reading is that the baby was in some sense thrown out with the bathwater, and some of those really important aspects of explicit teaching, not just in reading but also in language, grammar, syntax, all of those sorts of things were thrown out as part of this movement, and I think a generation of children really suffered because of that.
We have a situation now where schools basically get to choose their own adventure with respect to how they go about the important business, the life-changing business of teaching children how to read. So there's a curriculum, but it's really left to the discretion of individual schools and individual teachers as to how they go about approaching that curriculum.
There's now a push for more consistency and for schools to use phonics as the foundation of teaching all children how to read.
It's true to say that phonics is the best way to take a non-reader and move them to a reader. We cannot expect children to learn by themselves. They have to be taught. And direct instruction that often is associated with phonics can be very engaging, can be fun.
So the government has been in discussions with the deans of education to make sure that phonics is absolutely fundamental to teacher education. We want to ensure that our teachers know how to teach phonics. At the moment, we are very concerned that teachers don't know how to teach phonics in the classroom, and we want to make sure that they've got those skills before they go into the classroom.
Good.
Here at Salisbury Primary School in Adelaide's North, they've already decided a very structured phonics program is the best approach.
We have to cater for a really wide range of children. And sure, there are some children, no matter how you teach phonics, they'll get it. But there are lots of children who won't. And what I would say is that this approach is beneficial for everyone and it's not going to hurt anyone.
L says L.
We trialled this approach with just a small group of students. Those students experienced significant growth in 2 terms. So then we have then started to, use the approach across the school.
L says L. Looking away, L says L. Okay, can you now practice that 3 times on your board, please?
2 years in, the school's NAPLAN scores for reading and spelling are rising.
All right, can you chin your boards for me so I can have a look at yours? Nice. Okay, well done.
Last year, 75% of our students met the standard for Year 3 reading, and this year it would be sitting at around 96% of the students who've met the standard for reading.
WH at the beginning of a word makes the sound.
The South Australian Government has recently introduced a compulsory 7-minute phonics check for all Year 1 students.
EW at the end of a word makes the oo sound. Again.
We were concerned that our showing in NAPLAN reading wasn't particularly good. We did want to see some improvement in that work. Phonics is foundational to reading, Therefore, it was an obvious place to ensure that we had some kind of strategy in place. The phonics screening check is one part of our emphasis on reading.
The Federal Education Minister wants to roll out the test across Australia.
What phonics does is enable those children who come from low socioeconomic backgrounds, Indigenous children, children with a disability, children from remote and rural Australia, to have the fundamental skills to learn how to read. I can't understand why people would oppose it. As a matter of fact, it's such a no-brainer that it absolutely just confuses me.
But some teaching academics say an overemphasis on phonics oversimplifies the teaching of English.
Why would we spend that kind of money in that way when instead we could use the resources to pour into schools and preschools where there are children who are disadvantaged or vulnerable? I think we probably need to educate the community better about the complexity of learning to be literate, that it isn't a simple thing, you know, just being able to crack the code or decode words.
Okay, welcome Claudine, let's come inside. And Fox by Margaret Wilde and Ron Brooks.
These Year 4 students at Cambridge Primary School in Melbourne's western suburbs are following a new program to improve their writing skills by breaking apart the language in good books and experimenting with sophisticated vocabulary in their own work.
Why do you think the author chose the word haunted?
Because the word haunted means you can't forget about it and you keep thinking about it, and it's a bad thing.
English is a gorgeous language. We're so lucky it's ours. Kids should be thrilled to be working with it, playing with it, understanding how they could have an impact upon the reader, because that's really what writing is. It's this kind of mind control over a reader.
Which word are you most proud of? We show students, if we want to change a word, by changing an adjective or a noun, we completely change the mood or the tone. And we ask students to really be adventurous with their word choice.
So you want to do something like after the battle or after the ambush, because I want to keep the mood dark. And
I think after the battle is pretty good.
After the ambush. It's like a surprise attack or something.
Oh, yeah.
Good mates Xander and Simran like to work together on their writing.
A dark shadow.
A dark shadow comes... No, a dark shadow glides through the wreckage. Or glides through the castle.
Maybe runs or something like runs.
How can a shadow run?
Glides.
Shadows can't run.
Well, instead of gliding, maybe another word for that.
Crooked snake-like. You're right. Crooked should be before. Writing is something that you can do whatever you want. There's no restrictions. You can write whatever you want. You can open up your thoughts, let out your anger if you're angry. And it's basically there's endless possibilities to writing.
The school introduced the program because many of the kids were struggling with literacy.
We have a significant problem in the middle years of schooling, and the whole of my teaching career that has always been identified, that some children do become disengaged, disinterested, less motivated.
After the dreadful hurricane, when the roofs get blown off of houses, a little boy clings onto his mother. A boy with terrified eyes and haunted memories. He shivers as if he is freezing. His mother feels the same.
That's quite a sad story, Ahmed.
Well, I want the reader to feel sad because we've been learning about mood and tone. So I've just chosen a mood, and the mood was sad. Like I could have chose happy or angry or something.
Why did you choose sad?
It tells the reader that this boy had like really bad memories, and it's probably gonna stay with him for like a long time.
So it's haunting him.
Yeah, it's haunting. It's haunting him. Yeah.
What tone and mood are you trying to set there? Sad. Fantastic. So far, looking at the results, we found that many students had made up to 2 years growth in a 6-week period. We had students working at 3 or 4 years above expected level. And what you would have noticed today is that the vocabulary they're using is quite sophisticated for their year level.
So 3 or 4 years above expected level in 6 weeks?
Yes.
After you've done the basics, the teaching is thrilling. Writing is the most empowering tool that you can give them.
Misty Adonio has spent decades training undergraduate teachers, and now she helps working teachers improve their skills.
How would we show them the way that beautiful language works? So for me, grammar is creativity. Grammar isn't that boring stencil where you underline nouns and circle adjectives. That's not what it is. Grammar is knowing that the choices you make when you're a writer will impact upon what the reader sees and feels and knows. Look how many kids. Bring grammar back. I'm a grammar fan. I think it's the basis of creative writing, of being able to write in powerful ways, but gee, we'll have to change the way we teach it.
She comes across many teachers who need help with grammar.
Do you think that teachers know how to teach grammar?
No, I don't think they know, and they know they don't know.
No point during my own education was I ever explicitly taught grammar. And I think I felt like a fraud. How can I stand here in front of the class when I don't actually know some of the rules? And so over the last few years, I've actually spent a lot of time teaching myself.
Teaching herself grammar has come in handy for Melbourne secondary teacher Veronica Sanders. Marking her students' essays, she sees many kids who have reached high school without learning how to properly use grammar and punctuation.
So much of my work is remedial work now, because we have students coming in with such large gaps in their learning and learning deficits. So this is a year 11 essay on Macbeth from a little earlier in the year.
The person's made up words here, like assassinators instead of assassins.
Yeah.
And then desperateness with an I.
Necessarity is another made up sort of word there. And you wouldn't think, again, that this student is from a background quite privileged, middle class, has had all the opportunities given to them, and this is just a clear demonstration of how the system's failing.
Veronica Sanders sees students are starting secondary school with writing skills so poor they can't manage the complex work they're required to do.
It's really sad, but you see kids fall through the cracks. You see things get worse. And it's really difficult as a teacher because you want to help everybody.
At Yeronga State High School in Brisbane, the teachers wanted to stop this from happening to their students. So they focused on Year 7s who had just made that important transition from primary school.
This is a school who has one of the lowest demographics in the country. Our students come from very disadvantaged backgrounds. 65% of our students come from a non-English speaking background.
Oh, girls, so clever. So for each question, I want you to find 3 words that answer that question, and there are all these words around the stage.
The school uses drama to get the kids to act out the meaning of words to improve their spoken and written vocabulary.
So imagine this is the first time we're recreating this.
And it spent $900,000 in government funding on programs, including employing literacy coaches and giving teachers more time to focus on students' reading and writing skills.
Find a space on your own because you're going to do your own individual reflection writing.
How have your marks improved since you've been doing this in English?
A lot. They've grown a lot.
What have they gone from to?
So in year 7, if we're thinking realistically from when I began high school, I had around C plus B, C plus B minus. Year 8, B, 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 C, around there. Year 9, A, and then year 10, A as well. Yeah.
A couple of the key things that we decided to do was invest in people. So more teachers to reduce the class sizes and teacher aides to train and work individually with kids.
Put your hand up if you can tell me the rules of our philosophy circle here. Katarina.
Active listening.
Okay, so active listening. So what does that mean?
Yeronga is now proudly punching above its weight in NAPLAN literacy results.
Our kids are still below the national minimum standard compared to national and state averages. What that does not show you is the relative gain, which is if you have a child in year 7 and you test them again in year 9, compared to the national average, how much have they gained? Has it been 2 years of learning for 2 years of time? And we always exceed that, always. Our kids grow much higher than the national average.
Students do want to belong. Teenagers in particular do want to feel part of a group, and not being literate isolates them. It isolates them from their peers, it isolates them from lots of different services, lots of different opportunities in work and in life beyond school.
In suburban Melbourne are some of the kids the education system left behind. The Pavilion School is for kids at risk of entirely dropping out, and they have had to go back to absolute reading and writing basics.
So we had students that were coming here at 13 or 14, but in terms of their academic capacity to read, they were presenting at a much younger age, some preschool, 3, 4, 5 years old.
So those staff have to do an enormous amount of work first to establish trust with those young people and help them to understand that they're not stupid, that they weren't taught these things in the first place. They can learn them, but it's going to take some time. And unfortunately, it takes a lot longer. The longer we leave it with a struggling reader, the harder it gets to play catch up.
The word I'm going to say is snack. So listen to the sounds in the word snack. Snack, snack. I want you to tell me what is the first sound you hear in the word snack.
I guess.
That's right. Snack. Yeah, that's the next sound. Good job. So the next sound in the word snack is a snack. Can you guys do that?
Snack.
Write it on your board. Snack.
When you were trying to write essays, what would happen?
Just get stuck because I didn't know how to spell. So.
What did that feel like?
Just felt like everyone was like in front of me and just, I don't know.
How does that make you feel about yourself?
I don't know, a bit disappointed. Yeah.
Cheyenne, your next word is going to be ditched. Ditched. So say the sounds and write the word.
What does it do for the kids' self-esteem when the light bulb starts to be switched on?
Oh, it's huge. It's huge. Being able to write, read, spell, being literate is an incredibly powerful tool for young people to be able to navigate the world.
Wait, how do you spell match? M-A-T-C-H?
That's correct.
Oh, I did go to that.
Well done.
Okay.
So they'll often bring me pieces of writing that they've done that they wouldn't have otherwise been able to do, and I've got pieces of that writing, hanging up in my office there as evidence of the confidence. And I think the newfound effervescence, if you like, that students leave with when they are literate.
There's a whole new challenge for this generation of teachers and students. Digital technology has transformed education, but it's a double-edged sword for literacy.
We know already that children who have been sat in front of a screen from a very early age start school with thousands and thousands of words less vocabulary-wise than those who have been meaningfully communicated with.
Digital devices are everywhere. It's difficult for adults to compete with adults as well as children, but children are just instantly attracted to the visual nature of social media and devices.
Yeah, I think 10 years ago we may have thought give every student a device, put them in front of a screen, connect all the classrooms, that's the future of education. I think we'd say now that technology is an important part of the future of young people, but it's not the only answer to education. Part of our debate now is when we put technology to one side and how we need to train young people to not be addicted to their devices, to not constantly be in front of the screen, to think carefully through how the technology works in practice in their lives. I think, we all understand these tools are designed by people who want to keep our head in front of the screen. They make their money when our head is constantly in front of the screen. And one of the skills we need to teach young people is how to turn off their devices, how to turn off notifications, and how to decide to say no to the technology.
By the age of 12 or 13, up to 30% of Australian children's waking hours are spent in front of a screen.
When you go home at night, what do you do?
I just go on my phone. I don't do nothing else, just go on my phone.
Like when I need to eat, I go eat, come back with the food and start watching again.
So how many hours would you say a night you both spend on your phone?
Probably 6 hours.
Every night?
Yeah.
The Gonski Institute, in partnership with Harvard University, is undertaking long-term research into how screen time is affecting children's education. Early results from the Growing Up Digital study, released today, show that 56% of the 1,000 teachers they surveyed report students' readiness to learn in the classroom has decreased.
And of course, it should be the other way around, that we are aiming at young people who are able to learn more, and learning how to learn is one of those 21st century things that anybody should have. So if the situation is as the teachers are reporting to us, that the young people are not able to learn anymore as they did 3 to 5 years ago, as our question is, this of course is a worrying thing.
82% of teachers found technology is a growing distraction to students.
I might have a book that's really interesting, but maybe just hearing the buzz of a notification pop up, you just pick up your phone, you check it, you're like, oh, and once you've clicked on it, really, you're gone. There's so many different things that just keep coming up once you're on your phone.
I really like reading as well, and sometimes even when I hear the notification bell, I put the book away and then I never really read it again.
Do you know anyone who reads books?
No.
Not a single person?
No.
Cognitive neuroscientist Professor Marianne Wolfe, who has worked on international literacy projects, is deeply concerned about the many who don't read books.
The amount of time our youth spend reading a book or a newspaper or a magazine every day or every week has dramatically declined over the last few decades. Whereas 2-3 decades ago, you would have 60% of our young people always reading something either every day or every week, certainly. It's down to 16%. So not only do we have worries about comprehension of the material that is being read, we have parallel research that's showing us that the economy of attention of our youth is dramatically different.
Professor Wolfe's research shows constantly moving between screens is creating a new and vastly different digital reading brain.
So we're left with a more short-circuited brain as we become ever more likely to skim. And the evidence from our eye movement researchers is that skimming is the new normal, and that we're becoming browsers and word spotters. This allows us to process a lot more information, but there's a mistake that we make, that speed is the same as illumination.
We have to help children think critically about what they read and question it and not accept everything that's as absolute because it's on the screen or on a page for that matter.
Some schools are limiting access to technology. Yeronga State High provides laptops which block distracting social media and games, and it doesn't allow phone use during school hours.
If I had the option to use my phone, I would. And it would just end up being so distracting. And if we had our phones, I don't think anyone would get any work done.
There won't be like any socialising. Everyone would just be focused on their phone, not talking, and like everyone would just with phones would be just like staring at it. And it's actually not healthy, to be honest. It's not healthy for your brain. And like I do that stuff too, and like I really need to stop doing it, but it's really hard.
Many schools don't allow phones in the classroom, and Victoria and Western Australia will ban them in all state schools next year. The Federal Education Minister wants all states to follow this lead.
Mobile phones should be banned at school. I can see no reason that's been put to me as to why they shouldn't be.
But it's not just about classrooms. It's adults too who need to get smart about smartphones.
You know, if we are really concerned about the literacy of our young Australians here, we also should be concerned about what we do as parents and what we do as adults. Just like with the smartphones, that you know, if you play with your own iPhone all the time, you cannot be the first one to tell your own children to stop doing what you do. If you never read yourself, your children are not likely to become readers if you're just asking them to do what you are not doing. So that's why this role modeling to our own children is an extremely important thing to do.
Part of the challenge for us as educators is that this is a real-time experiment that's been conducted on us all. It's not as though we're wise adults who can reflect on how we dealt with smartphones when we were children. You know, we're learning to use the technology at the same time as we're trying to train young people to use the technology.
Alright, so today guys, we're going to be honing in on our descriptive writing skills. So guys, what are some of the core language techniques that we've been looking at as part of this term? Yep. Personification, fantastic.
Like it or not, technology is here to stay in the classroom, and some schools are boldly leading the way. The Janali High School in Sydney's south is what's known as an Apple Distinguished School, one of 470 schools around the world and 38 in Australia in partnership with the software giant.
We need to consider why these techniques are significant, okay? How do they actually enhance our writing?
Can make like the readers more engaged in your writing.
Yeah, fantastic. We want to make our readers engaged. Notice how...
To be part of the program, the school has to use Apple products. Apple advises on how to best use its technology in innovative ways in the classroom. Janali teachers give Apple feedback on what's working.
Does anybody have any questions?
This lesson involves one student using their best creative writing to describe a robot, so another student can use computer software to design it.
We had a real culture here about kids coming from primary school into high school who were disengaged. And the element of this descriptive writing activity was trying to show students that there was a practical application for their descriptive writing.
Beautiful. Anything else? Some other techniques?
I like doing it. Since I'm a visual learner, it actually helps me imagine stuff that's on a page into my brain.
So it improves your vocabulary?
Yes, it does. With and also language techniques.
What sort of language techniques?
Just off the top of my head, simile, metaphor, personification, an oxymoron, and much more.
if we walk in and present the way that we've actually taught literacy since the 70s, there's a disconnect. And so what we have to find is that consistency between the world that they live in outside our school and the way that we're delivering learning.
What would you say to the people who think that this is an overemphasis on technology in the classroom?
Well, I would, with respect, I would disagree. We've got to remember that literacy comes from a variety of sources. Sometimes we already have students that are disengaged as readers. We have to try and turn them around then and develop that love and passion of reading. And so, again, whether it be in a book or whether it be through a digital medium, we have to encourage understanding and passion about the power of words.
This partnership with this global corporation that creates devices designed to be addictive. Do you have any concerns about that?
Yeah, well, we have partnerships with Apple and Microsoft and Google. There are very clear parameters of the appropriate level of engagement. But I think those students have benefited from that experience. I think Apple benefits from the insights they get from working with
and the marketing
students.
Of having their logo up in front of the school.
Well, in a sense, but I think that's fairly limited. I mean, the reality is we are working with technology companies. They benefit from the insights they get from our schools. We benefit from working with them, the insights we get, and we can take those benefits and apply them elsewhere.
Technology may have changed the classroom, but it's utterly transformed the world outside it. When these children finish school, they'll enter a radically different workplace.
Literacy is now more important than ever. You know, if you go back 50 years, 80% of young people didn't do the HSC. And if you didn't have literacy and numeracy levels, you could still get a job. You could still support a family with that job. There were plenty of, in a sense, low-skilled jobs that were safe and secure and would last a lifetime. That era has now gone.
O is for octopus, octopus, P is for pig.
There aren't the jobs where if you had a strong back but you weren't good at your letters, you could go off and be a brickie. Everyone needs to have strong reading, strong numeracy, be good at humanities or sciences, build those higher order skills. We're not delivering for everyone, and that's a problem.
U is for umbrella, umbrella, V is for van, van.
I think there's certainly the potential for a literacy crisis. I'd like to be a little bit more optimistic than that. I think we are seeing increased awareness of this issue. I think we're starting to see the seeds of change. We are starting to see politicians on both sides weigh into this and start to look really closely at literacy instruction in Australia. So I would like to think that it's a crisis that we have the capacity to avert.